not going to work. It's not going to work. So go, Yisrael, go to the hallway here. When people talk while I'm talking, you get all this stuff.
Even when they don't talk.
If I would be entering elementary school, I can't imagine what medications they would be. Like, that would be the. Okay, Erev Tov. I want to get straight to work, and I'd like to cover tonight, as best as we can, the issues of Kashering for Pesach. If we do another shiur next week, I think that's the schedule. We'll talk about products for Pesach, cooking for Pesach, food for Pesach. Presuming the first thing we'll do is logical order is first kosher for Pesach and clean for Pesach. There's two ways of looking at this whole subject, and I find myself changing over the years in how I look at it. On the one hand, you can become like totally obsessed with cleaning for Pesach, and we've got to be careful. Our obsessions and our psyche, and today was the yahrzeit of my Rebbe of Steinberg, and one of the things that he often said every year is that you have to be careful that you're doing this to do the Ratzon Hashem. We're not doing this, it's not spring cleaning, obviously, and it's not that there's any particular mitzvah to make yourself crazy or to wear yourself out or to not be able to enjoy the Seder, etc. He made a big point of that, and I feel like I should also make a big point. He explained that when all of these halachas were in force, time of the Gemara, the time of the Rishonim in Europe, so people lived in one room and they had a chutzner outside, and what he remembered from Europe and Poland is, yeah, of course you take a day and you sweep out the house. That's not what's going on now, because even here in Eretz Yisrael, we're open to houses and apartments and a lot of space and cars and offices, and it's a little bit more complicated, but not to go crazy. On the other hand, be Mekubalim. I'm not a Mekubalim. But look at the writings of the Arizal. There's something very, very special about the actual sweat equity that one can achieve and one can acquire through cleaning for Pesach and through worrying about chametz and I guess by being a little bit obsessive. So we need to weigh those two things. I get, as I clean less, I become more obsessed with it. It's a strange thing. I want to just, before I begin, I just want to share with you just a thought. I always try to start with some kind of a meaningful or spiritual aspect to all of this, because it's not just about cleaning for chametz. Why are we cleaning for chametz? But I just want to share with you that what happened early on in Gan Eden, when Adam and Chava did the chet of the Eitz Hadas, so the world changed. And one of the changes that took place, as you all know, is B'zeyas HaPecha Toichal Lechem. Lechem became something that required Zeyas HaPecha. And this the Sfarim explained that the Zeyas HaPecha Toichal Lechem, it was something, it used to be the bread grew on trees. But now it has to be that there is a chametz process. What's a chametz process? Chametz means that something has to break down and become sour. It has to what is it when you're ferment? Thank you. It has to ferment. Chametz is very interesting because, let's say, wine. Wine is the most important of all beverages. And if you're not careful with it, it becomes chametz. It becomes vinegar. So this is like the up and down of everything. So the fact that things have to ferment and then grow into bread, that was a kilkul of the Eitz Hadas. That's really the source of chametz, or the fact that we have something like sourdough or yeast, when we use today's yeast, to make something ferment is also a result of the chet of the Eitz Hadas. And that's something that we're all trying to do a tikkun for. We all want the world to be perfect again. We all want there to be peace in the world, and we want the peace we don't want a land for peace. We don't want a fermentation in order to achieve the results that we're meant to get. We want it to be just straight from Hashem good. That's what we're hoping for. This is so much not in our experience that we don't even think it's good anymore. The more you struggle, the better it is. So this is the idea of getting rid of the chametz, getting rid of the chet of the Eitz Hadas, doing a tikkun for the chet of the Eitz Hadas. Just something interesting is that if you'll take the word chametz and seor, those are the two things that are usher. Chametz, something which leavens, ferments, and then leavens. And seor is sourdough, which was the Egyptian way of leavening bread. Just interesting that it's the same numerical value, chametz seor, as Eitz Hadas. 639, to work that out at home. It's so connected. Chametz and seor is so connected, excuse me, to the idea of the Eitz Hadas. Because when we were there with the Eitz Hadas and we ate from the Eitz Hadas, we brought this into the world. Oh, you want to be in charge? This is the way it's going to be. You want to be in charge? It's going to go through a fermenting process. There's going to be this koitz v'dardar, it's going to be a different type of, it's going to be a struggle. So chametz represents the struggle. Ironically, how do you get rid of chametz? Through the struggle. And I don't know that that's so ironic, but it's interesting that one has to struggle in the right direction. And that's, I think, part of the kavanah that we can have while we're dealing with toaster ovens and sinks and cleaning things out that we have to do. So from there, let's get straight down to the nitty-gritty. Chametz, just to understand a couple of important principles before we begin. Most things that the Torah says we're not allowed to eat, like treif or milk and meat, so it's lost in the road. If the majority of what you're eating, two pieces kosher, one piece treif, you're allowed to eat it. The Rabbanan came along and they said, no, we want to be more machmir than that, and they said it has to be 1 in 60. Shishin. So in order for something, treif, basar v'chola, whatever it might be, to be mutter, if you're eating it by accident or if it falls into your pot, so you need echad b'shishin. There are things that are more stringent than that. Things that are not only forbidden to eat, but they're also forbidden to have any kind of benefit from. No. Example of that is orla. So orla is more stringent. It's aser b'achila and aser b'hada, and therefore, in order to be mevatel that, in order to lose that, you have to have 1 in 200. And then there's chametz and avodah zarah. Those are the only two cases. Chametz and avodah zarah, where there is no such thing as it getting lost. Even if there's a drop of chametz in the food, it's aser. There is no bittul barov, there is no majority, there's no shishim, there's no echad b'masayim, nothing. If there's chametz, it's aser. And that's ad kedei kach that the poskim speak about. Let's say you're going to the Kinneret on Chol Hamoed, and some non-Jew throws the sandwich into the Kinneret. So now you have a drop of chametz in your water. The poskim speak about the fact you're not allowed to drink anything in the whole Kinneret. Because a drop of chametz is a drop of chametz, and maybe you're having a drop of chametz. The heter is that, okay, if you dropped it in the Kinneret there, is it reaching my water here, etc. That's the question, but that's how far it goes. So that's chametz on Pesach is for our purposes, because most of us are not dealing with avodah zarah. For our purposes, that is the most stringent of all halachas, chametz on Pesach. Not so with chametz on Erev Pesach. Chametz on Erev Pesach is just like every other Isser. Why? Because there's no chorus on chametz on Erev Pesach. Meaning, even though the Torah said that from 12 o'clock on, or in our case, from 10 o'clock on, you're not allowed to eat chametz, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same chorus. It's not aser b'hano. You are allowed to derive benefit from it. Says the Mishnah. You're allowed to sell it even if you have to. You're allowed to give it to your animals to eat. You're just not allowed to eat it. So now it becomes like every other trade. So it's an important thing to understand the difference between Erev Pesach and Pesach in terms of the prohibition of chametz. Why is it important? Not because you're going to do this on Erev Pesach, because here's the fun thing, that if some chametz would fall into your soup on Erev Pesach while you're cooking, Erev Pesach, talking about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Erev Pesach, so the halacha is that if it's 1 in 60, it doesn't make any difference, and once it doesn't make any difference, it stays in that status even through Pesach. I mean, once it gets a din of being kosher, it stays kosher. And that's why, is everyone with me on that? That's a very, very important principle. That's why many people do most of their cooking, and probably should do most of their cooking on Erev Pesach, meaning Erev Pesach means now. I mean, it doesn't mean Erev Pesach necessarily, but any time before the Seder night, even if you're this year it's on Shabbos, but even if you would be allowed to cook at the Seder night, you already get into the question of possibly, you forgot to kasher a pot, or you didn't kasher it properly, or your oven wasn't kashered 100% properly. All of that really doesn't make a difference on Erev Pesach. You're not allowed to do it l'chatchila, but it doesn't make it chametz. So anything you do before Pesach comes in is, we can go with the regular halachas of kashrus that we know all year round, and nobody is scrubbing so much from milchiks to fleishiks like they are from chametz. So that's one thing. The second thing is anything you buy before Pesach. So if there would be, chas v'shalom, a little bit of chametz in there, that chametz is lost. And once it's lost forever.
Is that why some people buy all the milk products?
Absolutely. The milk products, if you see milk, which is kosher l'Pesach, it simply means that it was milked before Pesach. If you buy milk products on the last day of Pesach, it simply means you're drinking milk which is 9 days old. Because there is no possibility, but with what the cows eat and the grain that's all around, there's no possibility of 100% pure milk. However, what there is such a minute amount that it doesn't make a difference if it's Erev Pesach. So the best thing to do, not saying that you're not allowed to cook things on Pesach, I'm not allowed to say you're not allowed to milk your cow. If you want to milk your cow on Pesach, do so. But what I am saying is that it's a very, very legitimate chumrah on the one hand to do everything before Pesach, because that way you really have very, very few questions. And it's a very big kula to know, the peace of mind, to know that whatever was done before Pesach is really okay. Whereas, in the classic case, the classic yeshiva case of being in the kitchen on Chol Hamoed and something drips down from whatever, let's say the fan on top of the stove that you forgot to kasher, something drips into it, the whole thing is, even if your whole life is in that soup, the soup is also to eat. So this is a very, very important distinction between Erev Pesach and how that's going to affect us and give us the peace of mind that we know that if we're doing most of our cooking and purchasing, same thing with eggs, the same thing purchasing for fruits and vegetables. People are machmir to do fruits and vegetables and buy them if they can before Pesach, because otherwise you have to wash them and make sure that they don't. Here's another example, chumrah, like the Chabadniks have a chumrah, many other people also, but they're a very big chumrah that if something touches the floor, they don't eat it. Only on Pesach. Once on Erev Pesach, nobody has that chumrah, because on Erev Pesach, if there is something there, it's batal. As long as you're not doing it on purpose, like you're sneaking a little chametz in there, but as long as you're not doing it deliberately, it's kosher and it's mutter and it's fine. So that makes it a little bit harder for us to do this chumrah, but it makes it, I think, a lot easier for us to do it because it means that there's no problem. So that's that's how it works when Pesach comes. Chametz, in order for something to qualify as chametz, and many people are a little bit confused about this also, it has to be one of the 5 grains. Chamishe, pide, doga. There's only 5 things that can become chametz. That's wheat, barley, spelt, oats, rye. Okay? Wheat, barley, spelt, oats, rye. Those things are not chametz. Wheat is not chametz. Matzah is made out of wheat. Wheat is not chametz. Wheat that soaks in water for 18 minutes or more becomes chametz. The same is true with spelt. The same is true with barley. So barley onto itself is not chametz, and wheat is not chametz. Flour is not chametz. The problem with those items is that, for instance, if you buy barley in the store, you're probably not going to find kosher Pesach barley because they go through a washing process before. Not that it's barley. The issue is not that it's flour. As I say, matzah is made out of flour. What's matzah made out of? It's made out of flour, but it's made out of flour that never touched water. That's the thing. Because in order for one of these 5 grains, or any of these 5 grains, to become chametz, it has to be in contact with water, and it has to be a long contact. It has to be a contact for 18 minutes, which is really just, that starts, by the way, from the time that it's cut from the ground, because all of this stuff has come in contact with water, hopefully because it rains, and it all gets wet. So but the thing is, as long as it's growing from the ground, and it's alive, so the water does not absorb into it, and it never goes through a chametz process. It's only dead things that can become chametz. So once once you cut it off from its source of life, then it can become chametz. So anything that we're talking about, in order to be chametz, it has to be one of these 5 grains. Let's say for our purposes, wheat, barley, spelt, oats. I guess we use all of those things. Rye. People use rye. Anybody have rye in their house?
Maybe there's rye matzah.
You phone? Okay. So same thing. So all of these things, if you just buy it in the store, it was probably washed, and therefore it's probably chametz.
So the idea of shmura doesn't sound like a chumrah.
Shmura means why?
Mishmar mishal ktsira, right? And if it wasn't,
Shmura is important, but shmura means not that it was in a dry silo. Shmura means that you're actually watching it from the time that it was cut off all the way to the end to make sure. The din of shmura, it's next week, but I don't want. But the din of shmura is only by matzah. Obviously, nobody has shmura other things. I shouldn't say nobody. Some people are matzah on it, but I don't think it's a legitimate chumrah. Because the Torah says, "Ushmarta ves hamatzos," shmura matzos, ushmarta ves hamatzos, and it says, "Be'erev te'echel matzos." So the real shmura is only by matzos. Normally, we could be kind of normal and say, if it's in a dry place, so we know water didn't touch it, it's good enough. Lit hashgacha. Hashgacha is different than shmura. There is also with chametz, and this is also before we get into the technical, the ovens and the barbecues, etc. It's also important to know that there's a few things you can do wrong with chametz. The one thing you can do is eat it. So you're not allowed to eat chametz. Point 1. You're not allowed to see your chametz. You're not allowed to own chametz. So again, chametz is like, there's no such thing as not owning trade. You're allowed to own trade. You're allowed to own trade. You're allowed to do business in trade even. You can't do, the only thing you can't do business and derive benefit from is milk and meat. You can't have enough. So what you're not allowed to do is like make hamburgers at McDonald's, cheeseburgers. That you can't do. But you're allowed to own. But chametz you're not allowed to own. So lo yimatzeh lecha, lo yirah lecha, and of course lo yisoicha. Because of that, there's a number of things that we do with the chametz. First of all, we don't eat it. Obviously, we're being very careful not to eat it. The other thing is we don't want to own it. So since we don't want to own it, we have many potentive that we make not to own chametz. Very, very careful when we sell our chametz. We burn our chametz. We do bittul chametz, called chamira v'chamia. We do all kinds of things to get it out of our rishus. And the Gemara already speaks about himself in Daf Gimel. Why do you need all these different? Systems to get rid of the chametz? Why is it just good enough just to say I don't want to own it? So the Gemara goes through every different scenario and tells us that you have to sell your chametz, you have to burn your chametz, you have to be mevatel your chametz in your mind, you have to close it off so you don't see it. There's all kinds of things you have to do not to own your chametz and not to see your chametz. You are allowed to see the chametz. You're allowed to walk down the street and see chametz. You're allowed to walk around in Manhattan and see chametz. You're allowed to walk in Mount Yehuda, unfortunately, and see chametz. You don't have to close your eyes to it. Maybe we shouldn't close our eyes to it. Maybe we should do something about that. But it's not yours. Yours, you're not allowed to eat. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch says that if a non-Jew, let's say a worker or something, comes into your house and wants to eat his chametz, so obviously you don't want him to get his chametz all over the place. But like al pi halacha, that's a practical issue. Al pi halacha, he's allowed to eat chametz in your house. There's nothing wrong with him eating chametz in your house. The only thing is, says the Shulchan Aruch, you shouldn't eat at the same table with him. with chametz, and that's because he might grab something out of his sandwich or salad or something. But it's not about chametz. So what that means is that there's a very big difference between the cleaning, in my opinion, between how you clean a kitchen and how you clean a house. Because the kitchen is all about it's about eating, and your machzad or your basement or your bedrooms or whatever is not, you're not cooking there usually. So that's more about so it's a very important distinction, because eating in the kitchen, as I said before, you don't want to have even a drop of chametz in any of your food. Even a drop, even a sandwich in the kiniyot is going to be also. So you're cleaning your kitchen, and your pots and your pans and your oven. You're doing that one way. Bedrooms, there it's different. It's not about a drop of chametz anymore, because the drop of chametz is only by eating. Over there, it's already about a kazayas of chametz. So kazayas of chametz is a significant amount of chametz. This is a kazayas of chametz, a cracker, a pretzel, something like that. That's a kazayas of chametz. So in the kitchen, you have to be much more meticulous than you would be any place else in the house where it's not a cooking place. Because if there, again, one place it's a matter of and in the rest of the house it's about I hope I'm clear.
So Rabbi, don't sit and don't
Find it. Another thing, an important thing, and I'm putting down principles which I'm hoping will answer a lot of questions in your own mind, so we don't have to go through every detail. Chametz has to be food. So what that means food. The definition of food is something that's edible to a human being. We stretched it. The Chachamim stretched it on Pesach, and it's not only edible to you, even edible to your animal. It's already still chametz because you're having benefit from it. Let's say you have chametz, which is not edible to you, not edible to your children, it's not edible to your dog. It's eidoi roy lachilas kelev. It's not, your dog won't go near this thing. So let's say there's chametz in your laundry detergent. So let's say they put some chametz in your laundry detergent. So there's people here with a dog. Does the dog eat the laundry detergent? No. Why? Because dogs are smarter than people in some ways, and they stay away from things that people don't know to stay away from. So once something becomes nifsal, I'm purposely, deliberately giving you the terminology, because why you don't learn the terminology. But something which is nifsal be'achilas kelev. It's so much so that even a dog wouldn't eat it. And a dog apparently, in other words, a cow might eat more than a dog. I don't know how that works, but even a dog would eat it. That's pretty far away from edibility, so it's not considered food. And once it's not considered food, it's kosher. Now, if a dog would eat it, what are you eating it for? So the answer is no, you're not eating it, but it might be in your soap. So if it's in your soap, can you take, let's say you have chametz in the soap. If you look at the bottle, which I do, if you look at the bottle of shampoo that you keep in your shower, like if you're sort of like this natural type of shampoo, so it's got wheat germ in it, and it's got this kind of a spice, and that kind of, it reads like you think it was a salad, it reads like it's on a menu, it's got a lot of stuff in there. But you can do the dog test with it, because they also put in all kinds of lanolins and chemicals. It's nifsal me'achilas kelev. So if I take a piece of bread, mamish bread, piece of challah, and I pour some chemical on it, even alcohol, which might be chametz onto itself, but not edible. So if I pour this alcohol on it, or some kind of a poison on it, so it's no longer edible even to a dog. As I say, animals naturally know to stay away from poison generally. So somehow they know. So the idea is that there are many, many things in your home as we speak which have chametz in it, and it doesn't really make any difference. Because as long as you know for sure that this is not an edible chametz. Now, a lot of people say they don't know this for sure, and the reason is because there are laws about this. For instance, this is interesting, this is a whole subject, but for instance, There's a difference between soap that you buy, let's say, body soap and facial soap. There's a difference. There's a reason why one is called facial soap. It's not just, one's good for the face, one's good for the feet. But what it is that according to law, in the United States and in Israel and in England, I don't know the other countries, in order for something to be facial soap, it can't be poison. Which kind of makes sense, right? So it can't be poison, So now there can't be poison, so possibly if there is chametz in there, so it's not nifsal achilas kelim. The same thing might be true, I'm not 100% sure, with different shampoos. It could be that it can't be poison, otherwise it would be illegal. So there are different deodorant, for instance, as an example. I just happened to check into this today on Google. But a deodorant can be complete poison. Perfume that you would use on your face, let's say, or makeup that you would use on your face, is not allowed to be poison. So it comes out an interesting halacha, because there are some things that you could say, should I check this ointment, should I check this cream, maybe it has chametz in it, maybe it says out of wheat, but it's poison. And there's some things like deodorant, if it has wheat in it, it's butcher. But things that, generally speaking, things that are around the face, you do have to check and make sure that it's not chametz stick. What's the problem? Not because we're worried you're going to eat it, because if there is a kazayas of chametz there, so then you're not allowed to own it. That's the point. You're not allowed to own it. I don't think nobody in the Gemara or the Mishnah Berurah are worried that you're going to eat your shampoo. That's not the issue. The issue is you're not allowed to own chametz. And, well, is it chametz? It has to be edible to be chametz. So you have to, now you already have to look at the different cosmetics. And again, there's like lists. You can buy lists of which cosmetics yes, which cosmetics not. I'm just giving you a rule that if it's something that's close to the face, so then you got to look at it, and there is chametz in some of those things. If it's not close to the face, it's probably not edible, because they're going to make it as strong as they can possibly make it, and the chametz really doesn't make any difference.
If it's on the shelf, let's say, H or...
I'm sorry, I don't hear.
If it's on the shelf, let's say, I get very anxious about religion and everything. If it's on the shelf at H, do you assume social interesting, or you have to watch?
I mamish have no idea.
You have to read everything. Do you have a book that I think?
There are so many things. Are you somebody that uses the internet?
Yes.
Okay, so online, sorry, nobody will. I use the internet, but you have, let me just give you a few good barabakovos that if you go into CRC, that's the Chicago Rabbinical, these are easy ones, or the OU, or the OK, and there's a new an app called the Blumenkrantz app. Rabbi Blumenkrantz died many years ago already, but there's the Blumenkrantz app lives on. And now I'm not sure that I would kind of like swear by any of them, but it's a real good guide. So if you put in decaffeinated coffee, it'll give you the whole story. And you can either go into the website or you go. That's the best thing to do. Here for Israeli things, so they have also, but they're not as easy. They're just not as sophisticated. But yes, there's books. The Badatz has a book. The problem with the Israeli ones is that they just usually talk about the things that they give hashkafa, and they don't talk about everything else. Whereas the American apps talk about all products. Oh, you have to ask my wife. I don't buy anything. I don't think I've ever been to a store and check it. Yeah.
If facial cream doesn't have poison in it, but the dog would still not eat it.
So right, poison doesn't have to be poison. You're right. Thank you for clarifying.
And also, when you said
Poison. Now, let me just make that clear to everybody. It's not about poison. Poison is one reason a dog would eat it. It could just not be disgusting. At a dog would eat. Pas she'ipsha, case of the Gemara, of moldy bread. So moldy bread is not chametz, and dogs stay away from moldy bread. It's an interesting thing. It's just because it's disgusting. Ipsha. Doesn't make a difference. It tastes so terrible, that's not something anybody would eat. But I don't know if that's I've never tasted shampoo personally, but maybe it's good. Might be good.
How does your skin benefit from it? Are you allowed to benefit from it?
If it's not chametz, you're allowed to benefit from it,
Ah.
and you're allowed to own it, and you're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to do any of those things, but you have to make sure that it lost its edibility. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they probably put flavor in it. You know. Let me go further. I just want to go further. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm just confused by your distinction between the face and the rest of the body, because everything for the face, if it's not poison, a dog's not going to.
Correct. If a dog wouldn't, theoretically, you could do the dog test. What I would love to see online is the dog test. like there should be 1,000 products that were put in front of X amount of dogs, and that would be to me a good halachic contribution if anybody wants to do this. I'm sure you'll get wealthy by doing this. There should be a dog test. This 3 out of 10 dogs went for this kind of dog. Do the dog test. But if you have something, whether it's because as this person said, if it's either because it's poison or because it's disgusting or because it smells bad, there's all kinds of reasons why there might be things in your medicine cabinet, there might be things in your like toolbox, you know, or something, which also have chametz in it. Who knows what they use, what they do to make things.
No, what about makeup? Makeup needs to be split.
If it's not edible to a dog, then it's not chametz.
No makeup is edible to a dog.
I don't know.
Something like lipstick?
Lipstick, yeah, that's like kind of tough for women to believe that it's mutter. But the thing is like this, lipstick, as far as I know, is very edible to dogs and everything. So that's why we're on lipstick. But if you look at it, which I just did, if you look at the ingredients of lipstick, it doesn't have any chametz in it except for the flavoring. So probably if it's unflavored, there's no chametz. It's all just like lanolin and things like that. There's no chametz in it. Once you start with flavors and that type of a thing, so then you have a problem. Besides for chametz, I want to get a little into the technicalities of it. So let me go. Besides for chametz, there's also kitniyot. Assuming most of us are Ashkenazim. Sephardim have a minhag that they eat kitniyot, and Ashkenazim have a minhag not to eat kitniyot. The reason is because, the reason goes back historically, but the reason why that broke up like that is because there is the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rav Yosef Karo, and there is on it the glosses of the Ramah, written by Rav Moshe Isserlich, and the Sephardim throughout history have taken on all of the Piskei Halacha of the Shulchan Aruch, and the Ashkenazim have not. They've taken on the halachas of the Ramah. So whenever there's an argument between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, if you're an Ashkenazi, you go with the Ramah. So that's why if you're an Ashkenazi, we don't eat any kitniyot. What is kitniyot? Kitniyot, here's the list that's come down through the generation. Beans, buckwheat. The term is legumes, but the question is, what are legumes? So the list is beans, buckwheat, corn. Corn is interesting because corn was not a ma'aseh adam until relatively recently, the last century or so. People did not eat corn, so it was considered ma'aseh behema. Nevertheless, it is brought, so I guess this is the Ruach HaKodesh of the Chachamim. Fenugreek, I never knew what that was until I started to eat it. That's a chilba, right? Fenugreek is chilba. Lentils, millet, mustard, peas, poppy seeds, rapeseed, rice, sesame seeds, soybeans, sunflower seeds. That's the whole list. Why, you didn't catch that? Beans, buckwheat, corn, fenugreek, lentils, millet, mustard seeds means peas, poppy seeds, rapeseed, rice, sesame seeds, soybeans, sunflower seeds. So flaxseed is not on the list. So rapeseed, by the way, is canola. Canola is rapeseed. The rule, Rav Moshe Feinstein taught the world the following halacha, that anything that's on this list is a kitniyot. Anything that's not on this list, even if it seems to you that it's a kitniyot, it's not a kitniyot. This was Rav Moshe's rule, and Tach Kivalnim, there are both sides, but that's the halacha. That means that, let's say, a number of years ago, What is a kitniyos? Kitniyos is when you grind it up, any of these things that I mentioned, it can look like flour, and people can get mixed up. So I guess Ashkenazim got mixed up, Sephardim didn't. So you can get mixed up with it. So you could say, like a number of years ago, like when I was a yeshiva buffer, so the Erev Charedis, Badat Erev Charedis, they said that potato flour also looks and they made up a new kitniyos, and the people in Meishar were not eating potato starch or potato flour because it's the same thing as flour. I believe that was a short-lived chumrah. I don't think it lasted, but it's. I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, but I'm saying that's not how we're knowing. Because it could be it's right, but the way we're knowing is like the Pesach of Rav Moshe. That's how the yeshiva world has accepted this halacha that you can't make up like either it is a kitniyos in the list or it's not a kitniyos in the list. One thing. Number two is there's a halacha explicit in the Rabbah that even though kitniyos is usher for us, it doesn't have the dinim like chametz. It's not like usher b'mashru. It's not even usher to own. It doesn't have the same dinim. And let's say you didn't make flour out of it, you made oil out of it, like canola oil.
Right.
So now comes Rav Moshe with the second halacha, which is very, very important, that hayotze mina kitniyos, if something which is derived from kitniyos, like oil, is not considered kitniyos. So now, if that's true, which it is, if Rav Moshe said so, it's true, so that would be that canola oil is mutter. I believe canola oil is mutter to eat on Pesach. Those that say, and you can argue about this in the supermarket with your friends and all that, but those that say that canola oil is usher, what do you mean? Canola is one of the kitniyos. The answer is that they're not, either they don't know, either it's ignorance, that's usually the case, or they don't know that we paskin that hayotze mina kitniyos is mutter. So even if something, the other thing about even if something was kitniyos, now as opposed to let's say yotze min chametz, yotze min chametz is chametz. So you can't drink beer or whiskey. That comes from, that's a wheat derivative. Even vitamin D is a wheat derivative. But if something comes as an extract of the kitniyos, it's not the same as being an extract of chametz, and therefore it's mutter. And that's how we paskin. I know my Rebbe, Rav Scheinberg, Chatzchila told people that they can use any oil that comes from kitniyos.
So what texture would it have to have?
Oh, here's a very good question. So, the thing is like this, you want to make sure what hechsher. Now, I'm not getting into hechsher, but I will say this, that hechsher are complicated. I'm going to give a Shabbos Hagadol drasha here, which everyone's welcome to come. And the title of the drasha, I have no idea what I'm going to say in this drasha. I just like the title of the drasha. The title of the drasha is, what is Bahadrim and why do we need it? That's the title. Again, I have to figure out what to say. But I do want to say this. You're allowed to have oil if it's a yotze min kitniyos, so you can have canola oil, let's say, right? However, being that Ashkenazim don't eat canola, and many don't use canola oil either, so they're not careful to give it a hashgacha. Maybe it's chametz in there. Maybe they make it on the same kalim that they would make something chametz. I don't know. I'm not such an expert to know. Most people are not experts to know that. So you need to make sure that the Sephardim will eat that oil. So the answer is that canola oil under the hefsher of Harav Machbud is kosher, because Harav Machbud is a tzaddik and a very big machber in halacha. You can rely on him on everything, 100%. I think, in my opinion, it's the best hashgacha in Israel. You can rely on him for everything, except that he eats kitniyos. So we can't rely on him on Pesach because of the kitniyos. However, if it's a yotze min kitniyos, like canola oil, said Rav Machbud says it's okay, that means there's no chametz, all that's in here is kitniyos. Okay, I'm good with you, because if it's kitniyos, if this is a yotze min kitniyos, so then it's okay. Did you catch that?
We used to use the peanut oil.
Peanut oil, same question. But first of all, peanuts are probably not kitniyos to begin with.
So why don't we use it?
Why don't we use it?
We don't use them in Buklim anymore.
No.
That's true, like, that's not on the list.
It's not on the list, and many people do use peanut oil. But they don't even sell it kosher Pesach, as far as I know. I want to go back to something I said before, because it comes to mind. We're talking about the difference between Erev Pesach and Pesach. And on Erev Pesach, you need that if there is chametz, it's batal b'shishim, and if it's on Pesach, even a drop is us, right? Everybody remember that? It was a long time ago. So there's in England, Olav Shalom, a great posek, Dayan Lapia. So this is true. His wife, his family, they did not kosher their oven to cook for Pesach. What's telling you?
They didn't kasher because it's not necessary?
Not necessary, because they cooked everything. He was machmir to cook everything before Pesach. He never koshered his oven. Machmir to cook everything before Pesach, and he cleaned it out, and he said that whatever gets in, what could get into my food, that's not going to be batal b'shishim. So it's all batal b'shishim. So he l'chatzil. Now I'm not recommending this. I can Dayan Lapia will tell you yes, but I can't tell you to do that because my Rebbe didn't do that. We were machmir, but I just want to tell you how a chashuv yid, a very chashuv yid, you knew him, a very chashuv person. That's what he did. L'chatchila. They didn't kosher their oven. Maybe he koshered it right before Pesach, just in case they wanted to cook something on Pesach, because once it's Pesach, it's a masher. But what was the lumdus? People hear this, they think, well, was he a conservative rabbi or something? Absolutely not. He was a chashuv person. So what's the pshat? Because he knew the halacha. And the halacha is that before Pesach, chametz is batal b'shishim. And if your oven is clean, you simply wash off your oven. Forget about kashering and everything else. If you simply wash off your oven, so there's not going to be anything in there. There's not going to be anything. It's not going to have chametz dripping into your whatever you're making into your chicken. So it's okay. And that's what he said. Clean. I said he didn't kasher. He cleaned his oven like you do between milchus and flations. That's what he did. But it's not kosher. You don't have to kosher. You just have to make sure there's nothing there. There's nothing there bad. Let's not get into milchus and flations because we're going to get into trouble.
Rabbi Hegman?
Yes.
You mentioned something about vitamin D. We shouldn't take that then during...
Vitamin D is chametz. It's edible chametz. It's a wheat derivative. You know, the reason why we take supplements of vitamin D is because we're not in the sun enough. So what they do is you take things that are in the sun enough, like wheat, and that absorbs the vitamin D, and then they put it into a potion, and you drink vitamin D. Vitamin D is chametz. Got to watch these supplements and vitamins, by the way, because the supplements and vitamins have a lot of chametz in them. They have a lot of chametz. I'm not talking about medicine. Medicine is different. First of all, medicine you need. If you need medicine, you need medicine. But so I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about like supplements. So a lot of the supplements have a lot of natural wheats and things that it certainly has kitniyot in it, and that's what's actually being grabbed. It's just a very concentrated level, so you have to be careful. A lot of vitamins have a lot of chametz in it. Vitamin D is an example of vitamin D is 100% pure chametz. 100% pure chametz. One of the reasons why milk is chametz is because, at least I don't know about here, but at least in the United States, they always have vitamin D. It's not like this. And vitamin D, every bottle of milk you buy says vitamin D. This was a government thing because kids weren't running around in the sun like they used to do in the olden days. So they were always indoors with air conditioning. They were always indoors. So they added vitamin D into the milk. Kosher Pesach milk means you take the vitamin D little tube, goes into the big vat of milk. They take it out, and that's Pesach milk. Just that vitamin D. What do we care? It's a drop, you know. If you, I see this with my own eyes. If a big vat of milk, maybe half the size of this room, and they have a dropper, and every couple of minutes another drop. You go to that very strong stuff, you know. It's a spritz, like a little spritz. So it's bottled. The answer is chametz is not bottled. That's your kineret story. I just want to. You know, probably most of us know already how to kosher your oven, how to kosher your stove. Go over it quickly, but there's also new technology, and it's actually quite fascinating because just the last few days, a lot of people told me they have different things that I had to, look into. It wasn't the standard. There's technology in the kitchens, which is different than it was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. The best one that I heard today is somebody has I just learned about this, you probably know, there's a sous vide cooker. You know what that is? Or Hashem, I'm not the only one. SOUSVIDE. What? It's, yeah, it's a water, it's basically, it's French, yes. basically what we would call an immersion heater. This immersion heater is such that it's a special kind of immersion heater that you heat up water. This is a method of cooking. You heat up the water, then you have special bags that you put your food in, like you can put your brisket into this thing, and it cooks it without losing any of the moisture and all that. So it's a type of cooking. Chefs like these sous vide cookers. What's cool about them is they work on Wi-Fi and the internet. It's a hotspot. So that means that if you're sitting here right now in this class and you have a feeling that your soup is over boiling, so you can just shut it off right from here. That's the sous vide cookers. Not only that, just somebody came to the house and showed me today. Not only 4 gas things that come out like the old days, old-fashioned thing. So that has to be Pesach thick. How do you make it Pesach thick? So you have to either cover it or kasher it. Cover it, easy. You take a piece of blech, like not the electric ones, but a piece of blech, and you put it on top. Tin. Or you can cover the whole thing with aluminum foil. They sell special thick aluminum foil. Or if you have one that's made out of stainless steel, if you're from those lucky people that have a stainless steel stovetop, so then you can very easily kasher the stovetop. It's not a big deal. You can just kasher it with boiling hot water. So you just pour boiling hot water on it. Nothing doesn't break. Unless it's already bleeding away, it doesn't break. What?
They told the electrician told me never to pour boiling water.
Okay, but nothing happens.
In the water because it breaks it.
Okay, you're talking about electric. I'm talking about gas.
No, gas.
Okay.
Gas stove.
I've done it. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. It doesn't work for the next 20 minutes. It's dry out. I'm saying that's a regular cooktop. It's a very simple thing. If you have one that's like maybe the older kind, that's like an enamel finish on it, I don't know, older, but different type with enamel finish, then there's no kashering enamel. There's no such thing as kashering enamel. You must cover it with aluminum foil. You don't have to cover all the black grapes. You don't have to cover it. And the reason you don't have to cover it is because all you have to do is turn the fire on, and the fire itself will kasher. Fire is a very, very good way of kashering. In fact, it's the best way of kashering it. The kashering, we'll speak about that more in a minute, like how to kasher something. If you have if you made the mistake of buying a glass stovetop or ceramic stovetop, then you are cooked, because there's no way to kasher it. I'll tell you why. Because you can't put a ceramic is not kasherable. If you have a ceramic stovetop, is not kasherable. You can't pour boiling hot water on it. You can't take a blowtorch to it. There's nothing you can do with it. And you can't cover it, because if you cover it with a piece of aluminum foil, it will crack. It's not coverable. The only thing you can do with those things, as far as I know, is you can build something or buy something that raises about 2 inches off the surface, so that it frames your stovetop, and then a piece of tin goes over it, and you can cook on like a blech, but raised, because if you put the blech right on the glass and it can't breathe, it's going to break. So you have to, just a practical thing, it's not a kosher thing. So you got to pick it up, and you could do it that way. The only problem with that system is it doesn't cook the food. That's the problem. Apparently, it's very difficult to cook the food. So that's a regular stovetop. That's the different hollows of the regular stovetop. An induction stovetop. Anybody know what that is? An induction stovetop is a different story. It is a glass sort of a top, glass ceramic, somewhere like this, somewhere like that. Induction stovetop, you can. Let's say you have a pot of water. You turn on the induction, whatever you turn on, you turn it on. The water boils quickly, like a microwave almost. It boils much quicker. You take the pot off, you put your hand down, it's not really hot. It's only as hot as the hot pot made it. Meaning it's not really hot. It's like the walls of a microwave. If you touch the walls of a microwave after you cook something, so it might be hot, you can burn yourself, but that's only like an indirect heat because the food made it hot. But it's not hot like the walls of an oven are hot. So an induction oven, it's a miracle. What happens is you put the pot on, and the pot gets hot. Why? Because there's magnets underneath it, and magnets going in different directions causes heat to create. So what happens is the pot itself becomes the conductor of the magnetism. So it won't work, let's say, with a glass pot. It'll only work with an iron pot. It won't work with aluminum. It'll only work with iron, and you put the iron on there, so the pot itself becomes the cooking mechanism. And it's a fantastic thing because there's no, it's a great thing, I'm impressed with it, because there's absolutely no waste, and all the heat is in the pot. Like if you have a fire under your pot, so the fire is going here, the fire is going there, all the heat, the heat of a gas range has to fight with nature to make your spaghetti hot, cook. But this is in the pot, it's all in the pot. Are you allowed to use it on Pesach or not? At least 5 people asked me this, so as I'm saying, they must be on sale. What's the halacha? So the chora, if it doesn't get hot, and you have a Pesach pot, obviously, put down on it, so if it doesn't get hot, so it's a piece of glass, which is probably fine. The only problem is that the pot itself makes the surface hot. So in the fancy ones, I learned, there's sort of like a fan that goes down and it cools it. It's a cooling mechanism, so the thing never gets hot. It's never yad soletis. Amazing thing, and yet it's cooking your pot with smoking. You can actually put your finger on it while it's cooking. I'm not the posek to say that it's mutter, but I'm just going with the theory over here. The theory should be that with a Pesach pot, if you clean it very well, it should be fine, because it's the same as kashering a microwave. How do you kasher a microwave? A microwave is a very, very similar idea. A microwave is not a tanur, it's not an oven that the Chazal were speaking about. The halacha of an oven is, the way an oven works is that the heat element, whatever is gas or electric, doesn't make any difference, the heat element heats the walls of the oven, and the walls of the oven heat the food. That's the way an oven works. It's not that the element inside of there is heating the food. Also, but the way an oven works, the concept of an oven is let's create an environment where the walls become very hot, and since the walls become hot, it'll make your food. That's the way an oven works. A microwave works in a completely different way. Something like an induction oven. What's happening is that the microwaves are messing around with all the cells and stuff, and the molecules and everything is jumping around and getting hot, and hence the chicken gets hot. Even though you could put your hand on the walls of the microwave and it doesn't get hot because it has nothing to do with walls. The only reason those walls are there is so you don't get nuked every time you microwave something. It's there to keep the microwaves in, but it's not there to cook. So therefore, a microwave is an extremely kosherable item. All you have to do with a microwave is wash it out, clean it out, and in our house, we also, this is true, by the way, all year, both installations. You got to rethink how you do it. The only problem that you can have with the microwave is that actual food, not heat, actual food, let's say you're cooking lasagna, spritzes onto the microwave, now you're cooking chicken, comes back down. That's the problem. But if it would be perfectly clean, then it's perfect to use even for milk installation. So the simple answer is just cover your stuff when you put it into the microwave. So, but a microwave for Pesach, all you have to do is just wash it out very well. And what we do, which is probably a chumrah, because is the glass plate that goes around there. So we cover that with saran wrap. Is it amazing? You can put saran wrap in an oven, so it shows you it doesn't get that hot. You can't put it into a real oven. It shows you that it's not so hot there, and it's fine. It's there. It's usually there until Hanukkah. This saran wrap. That's my wife. Electrical top is, well, again, there's the new kind and the old kind. The new kind is glass cover. But the old kind is the elements themselves never become chametz, and the middle is the same as gas. So it means to say either cover it, or if it's stainless steel, kosher. So that's the oven. A regular oven. Does anybody have a regular oven? It's like a regular oven. So a regular oven is probably the most complex thing in the house to kosher. So just listen carefully. What you have to do is as follows. First of all, it has to be completely clean. You can't kosher something which is not completely clean. Let me back up. I'm sorry, I apologize for doing this, but let me just back up a second. There's two ways of koshering. One way of koshering is by getting the chametz out of the walls of the oven. Another way of kashering is by destroying the chametz. It's a different system. One you would use a blowtorch, the other you would use heat. When it comes to using heat, you have to apply the same amount of heat that was ever used before to get the chametz into the oven. That's the amount of heat it takes to get the chametz out of the oven. Yeah? Kibolo, kachkolta. When it comes to, but you always have this option, I think, you always have this option of taking a blowtorch to your oven and just going over your oven and destroying all the chametz, and that's the easiest thing to do. Except, this is just a personal thing, I don't think anybody does it right. In other words, there are people that say, like Chabadniks are machmir to use only a blowtorch on an oven, but it would take, it seems to me, that to cover an entire oven to the point that every part of it is hot enough that if you would take a match to it and just touch the wall, it would light. That's the shear. That would take about 2 hours at least to have it. So what happens is you go there with a blowtorch. I don't think that's kashering. So that's why what I do is as follows. You clean the oven very well. Clean means, which is of course a big question. What does clean mean? It's always a nasty spot. Clean means that you can close your eyes and run your hands along it when it's not when it's hot. You run your hands along the wall of the oven and you don't feel anything. That's what clean means. It doesn't make any difference what you see. Sometimes there's a spot, it's just a spot. It's there. Sometimes it's a defect in the stain or a defect in the metal. But if you can feel it, then it's there. So it's the touch test that you do. If the oven has to be completely clean. Let's say you can't get it completely clean. So you spend hours and hours on this kind of sponge, and that kind of a sponge, this kind of chemical, that kind of chemical. You can't get it completely clean. Simple. Get a blowtorch and hit that spot and destroy that piece of chametz. So if there's a spot, I don't know why people make this so complicated. It's so simple. You get a blowtorch, you buy it in the hardware store. You get a blowtorch, easy to use. You hit the spot until it becomes burnt, saruf, gone, magamri. And now you don't have any, by the way, then you can just wipe it off usually. When you hit a spot, I've done this many times, you hit a spot that seems like you're not sure what it is. When you hit it with a blowtorch, you can see like the oils come out.
What is a blowtorch in Hebrew?
Um,
Is that a matzit
No.
that you use to light the
No, like got a gas tank.
Yeah.
I got a gas, Amigaz. What's it called? Amigaz? It's got a tank, orange. It has a tank and a thing, a spout on it. Maybe a plumber would use it. You turn on the gas, you put a thing there, and it goes. Blue flame. Yeah, because it's propane. It's not gas usually. I don't know what it's called. But the thing is, you always have the option of hitting the chametz or hitting the spot. Let's say, I don't know, the chametz, hitting the spot. Once you get rid of that, this is what you do. And with this, I'm going to end tonight because time is time. What you do with an oven is you have to heat it up to the same degree that it was heated when you made it chametz stick to begin with. So let's say, think of the highest temperature you ever used, broil, the highest temperature you ever used. Let's say the longest time you ever use it for. Tell me, you're this more than I am. 2 hours, 3 hours, let's say. Let's broil. Let's say 3 hours on broil. That's a lot. That's a lot. I don't think anybody does that. And you keep it on for that amount of time. So first you clean it, give it the touch feeling, and you keep it on. Now, there's a chumrah here, and that is, first of all, you can't have used it for 24 hours. So again, start from the beginning. You want to kasher your oven. First, don't use it for 24 hours. I suggest spray it with some kind of an easy off, whatever they use here in this country, say something or another. Just spritz it. Why? By spritzing it, not to make it cleaner, because then if there's any food value, you just killed it. You poisoned yourself. So just spritz it with that. Let it sit for the 24 hours because it has to sit for 24 hours. Then you clean it, and then you kasher. Kasher means you turn it on to the same amount, same temperature, and the same amount of time that it was when it became chametz. And then your oven is kasher. Here's another chumrah that we do, and that is that there are different ways that the chametz or the treif or whatever it might be can get into your oven. One of them is steam. So to get the steam element out, so we take a boiling pot of water and put the boiling pot of water into the oven while you're kashering. So not only are you kashering it with heat, but you're also kashering it with steam. So really you could do three things. You can use a blowtorch. After first you clean it. You wait 24 hours. You can use a blowtorch to clean the nasty spots. I wouldn't recommend it for everything. You can use by the way, if you do it right, you possibly will break your oven. So you can use a blowtorch. After that, you can use heat, just whatever the degrees is on. And then besides for that, you put in water and you're in good shape, because then you have a kosher oven for Pesach.
What about the self-cleaning one?
Self-cleaning oven, thank you, is self-kashering. If it's self-cleaning, you don't have to do anything, just turn it on. In fact, if you have a self-cleaning oven, put other things in there also. You put the racks are nasty sometimes, but you can put other things. You can put pots in there, you can put things in there, just make sure you're not going to break it, because it gets very hot in there. If it has like a plastic or bakelite, it'll melt in your oven and ruin everything. But if you just have like a cast iron frying pan, you put it in the self-cleaning oven, it kashers it. Okay, I'm going to end because I don't want to keep anybody here.
But what use of weight does the chametz flour
I'm using cans because you don't want to. Right, you don't want to use a Pesach one. Right, you don't want to use a Pesach one because you're going to make a chametz. You don't want to use a chametz one to make. Right, so you want to use a tin can or a fatami or something like that.
You put that in after you...
While you're turning it on for an hour and a half, it should be on with water.
So the whole time that it's cooking for the hour, it's on for the hour and a half that heat.
There's water in
That
it.
pan with water should be in it.
Yes.
And with the microwave, won't the pan have melt on the
No.
plate? It doesn't melt. Okay.
Which proves the point that it doesn't get so hot in there.
You need to double wrap that plate, or...
You don't need to double wrap it.
And do not boil water.
I have in our other office a shrink wrapper, so I just shrink wrap it.
Do not boil water in the microwave also?
What if you do? So if you do, if you're worried about steam, you can do the same trick. And that is, you can take a paper cup of water and put it in the microwave for 5 minutes after it's clean, and it'll fill up with steam too.
But you don't
I
even
guess
have
a
to...
chumrah.
Oh, wow.
That's a chumrah. Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we'll continue next week, Wednesday night. If anybody wants to address anything in particular, wants me to address anything in particular, just send me an email and I'll try to. Self-clean up. You don't need anything. That's legal. The door will get cleaned. The part
Thank you.